most supreme, there is no lack of ways and means, and Hiram of Tyre has, in fact, already received instructions to fell cedars in Lebanon, and marble and stone are also ready in abundance. But it requires your wise counsel to enable the building to proceed without the use of any iron. It would not be proper to employ an element of destruction in the erection of a structure which is to be dedicated to peace and harmony. At the end of the king's speech, the members of the court looked at one another in perplexity for a while. Then they began. Wise king and ruler, Moses, our teacher of blessed memory, found himself in similar perplexity when he wanted to engrave the names on the ephod, but the Spirit of God enlightened him, and he soon found the marvelous worm called shomir, which possesses the wonderful power of cutting by a touch the hardest object known. If, O glorious king, you succeed in obtaining that wonderful insect, you will have no need of iron or element of destruction in the erection of the house, which you wish to consecrate to the Most High God, and dedicate as the emblem of peace and harmony. The king's countenance brightened at this information, and lifting up his eyes heavenward, he said, Verily, O God of Israel, thou hast granted wisdom and knowledge to my people Israel. You, my friends, have given me new life and fresh spirit. Now, can you tell me where the wonderful insect is to be found, so that I may have it brought and may utilize its power? That, mighty ruler, replied the wise men, is beyond our ken, and we doubt whether it is within the knowledge of any mortal man. It is supposed that the shomir has its home in wild and desolate places which have never been traversed by human foot. We are therefore not able to comply with your wish. But if you have the advice of a male and a female demon who traverse those wastes, we doubt not that they will be able to throw more light on this dark mystery. Solomon then sent to Sishon, the rendezvous of demons, had a male and a female demon brought before him, and addressed them as follows. It is said of you that you have a knowledge of mysteries which we do not possess. Tell me, therefore, where I could obtain that wonderful insect known as shomir. They replied, We are aware of the existence of the marvelous shomir, but are unable to give anything like a near description of its abode. That is only known to our king and great master, Ashmedai. He alone would be able to gratify your wish. And Solomon said, Where is the abode of your king and great master? His home, was the answer, is on a high mountain, far, very far from Jerusalem, in a lovely and beautiful spot. There he has a well filled with cold, clear water, covered with a wooden slab sealed with his seal. Every day he leaves his terrestrial abode and flies heavenward to hear the songs of the angels, who sing praises to the great God. Being refreshed with the heavenly hymns, he searches through the heavens, and casts his eyes on the various spheres within his view, and toward evening he returns to his abode. Arriving there, he looks carefully at the seal of his well to see that it has not been tampered with, and, finding it all right, he lifts the slab and refreshes himself with the cooling and refreshing liquid. More than this, O mighty king, we are not permitted to impart to you concerning our king and master. For a long time King Solomon allowed his eyes to wander about his great room, and at last fixed them on a youth amongst the assembly, a youth of powerful frame and lovely appearance, and with an expression of the most resolute and keenest spirit in his countenance. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, exclaimed the king, long have I known you as the most courageous in all my legions. See now what a magnificent opportunity to prove the truth of the opinion I have formed of you. Will you venture to bring Ashmedai as a captive to me, and by such heroic deed not only to make yourself a hero amongst your people, but to do a great service to the holy cause of your religion? I will venture, cried the youth, any task your majesty may honor me with, his eyes shining brightly with delight. God be with you, said the king. He knows that we do all this to glorify his name. May he guide you and bless your undertaking. Benaiah left the assembly, and at his orders a chain was given to him upon every link of which was engraved the unspeakable name of God in the Chaldean language. He also ordered for his journey a large quantity of lamb's wool, spades and shovels, and a pipe of the most exquisite wine of the vines of Baal-Hamon, a famous vineyard, the property of King Solomon. Thus equipped, Benaiah started with a few followers on the perilous expedition. After a long and adventurous journey through the desert, he reached a lovely spot on the mountain which was the home of Ashmedai. On the top of the mountain grew a cluster of lovely palms, on which an eternal summer seemed to rest. At its foot ran a clear brook, teeming with fish of all sorts. On the slope of the mountain could be seen the well of the great Ashmedai, as described by the two demons. Benaiah mused a long while, then he said to his followers, My friends, we have now reached our destination, but not our aim. Now let us bear in mind that muscular power is now of no use to us when we have to deal with the master of demons. But God has granted us discernment and understanding, and with these divine gifts it should not be impossible to prevail over the mighty king of the demons. If only we contrive to empty his well of the water and fill it with the wine we have brought with us, then our task is an easy one. But to effect this is a formidable difficulty, because we must not lift the slab and break the seal, or we defeat our purpose. He then commenced, during Ashmedai's absence, to dig a pit under the well, and connected the two by boring a small tunnel, so that the water from Ashmedai's well ran into the newly made pit. Then he stopped up the small tunnel completely with the lamb's wool. Then a similar pit was dug above the well, and also connected with Ashmedai's well. The wine was poured in here, and found its way into the well. After this he had every possible trace of the fresh digging removed, and ordered his companions to go away from the place. But he climbed up one of the many palm trees and sat there to watch events. When the shadows of the evening lengthened, there was a fiery flash through the skies, and there came with it a monstrous creature with black wings, which gradually let itself down to the earth. Ashmedai, for he it was, looked long on the seal of the well, and finding it untouched, broke it, lifted up the slab, and was about to refresh himself with the contents of the well, when he detected that it contained wine instead of the refreshing liquid which he had husbanded. He turned in disgust from it, exclaiming, "Wine is a mocker, and every intoxicant confuses the senses. No, your flattering sweetness shall not lead me astray, as well would I suffer the tortures of unquenched thirst, as have your exquisite taste upon my palate." But after a while Ashmedai could not any longer withstand his craving for some liquid, if only to moisten his lips, and he said to himself, "If I only sip at the accursed stuff, it will have no power over me. I will touch of it no more than is sufficient to moisten my burning tongue." He drank at first very sparingly, but it was very, very sweet, and it seemed to give him a brightness and freshness he had never experienced before. "Only a little, very little more," he said, "not sufficient to overmaster me." But this very little was followed by a few more very littles, till he became quite intoxicated and fell asleep. This was quite satisfactory to the concealed young hero, who, climbing down from his hiding place, went cautiously forward until he reached the sleeping demon, over whose neck he threw the chain with the name of God engraved on every link. Ashmedai slept till the early hours of the morning, when he found himself heavily fettered, scarcely able to turn round on his bed. He looked for heavy manacles, but found only a fragile chain round his neck, which he could not credit with such immense power. He tried his utmost to snap the frail thing, but without success. He roared terribly, so that the very air was filled with the violent noise. "Oh, set me free! Who will set me free from this hellish burden?" "No one," came the answer from the hitherto hidden Banihu. "All your efforts are fruitless. You are fettered, not indeed with iron manacles, only with a chain of softer metals, but that has the name of God engraved on it, and in the name of God you are my captive." Ashmedai, on hearing Banihu's words, became quiet and resigned to his situation. One of Banihu's men was ordered to take charge of him, and like a tamed lion he was led forth. Ashmedai's concealed courage exhibited itself now and then on a journey toward Jerusalem. As they passed one day a gigantic palm tree, he asked for a rest under its shade, and when this was granted, he rubbed himself so violently against it that it was uprooted. Thereupon he passed a hut, the property of a poor widow, and was about to demolish it, when the woman, seeing the giant about to lean against the frail walls of her home, prevailed upon him to spare her hut. One day they met a blind man who became entangled among some bushes and could not find his way out. Ashmedai took the man by the hand and led him out of his perplexed situation into the highway. So also they met a man in his cups, who was nearing a precipice into which he was about to fall, when his demoniac majesty hastened to get him out of danger's way, and placed him in a safe road. They passed one day through a town where he heard a man calling out to a shoemaker, "Heda, friend, can you make me a pair of boots to last me 7 years?" Ashmedai burst out laughing at this. They met also a wedding party, with music accompanying them. Ashmedai wept. They saw a wizard sitting on a large stone telling a patronizing clientele their future fate, and again Ashmedai laughed. Banihu was curious to know the motives of the demon's conduct, but he could not be persuaded to explain himself, and said he reserved the explanation for King Solomon himself. When they arrived in Jerusalem, Banihu brought his captive triumphantly before Solomon, who was sitting on his throne surrounded by his counselors and elders. At the entrance of Ashmedai they rose from their magnificent divans. Ashmedai, however, in great excitement and anger, took a long staff, and, marking round himself a space of 4 yards in circumference, and pointing to King Solomon, exclaimed, "Look at this man, a king of dust and ashes. When he died, nothing will be his beyond a space of earth the size of which I have just marked out. Yet he is not satisfied to have subjected all his neighbors and all the kingdoms as his tributaries, but he must needs try to wrench the scepter from the king of the spirits. Otherwise, why have you, O great king, brought such contempt and dismay upon me?" Be not angry with me, returned Solomon, king of spirits, and be assured that conquest is not the object of your captivity. It is a matter appertaining to the glory of my God, who is also your God. Tell me then where I can obtain the marvelous shomir, of which I have need to cleave the marble and stones for the house of God. If that is the object, returned Ashmedai, pacified and reassured by Solomon's reconciling words, then I willingly submit to my hard fate, and will also tell you where and how to obtain the much-sought shomir. The shomir belongs to the Lord over all seas and waters, but he has entrusted it for safekeeping to a mountain bird in the desert. This bird is to be found in the desert on a very steep barren hill. There in a cliff it has bored out a hole and keeps the shomir, which was created in the evening of the 6th day of creation, before the Sabbath was proclaimed. The services of the young hero Benaiah were again called into requisition. Solomon addressed the youth with his wonted eloquence, referring to the services he had rendered in the past, and entertaining no doubt of the hero's willingness to render this consummate national service of obtaining the shomir, the reward for which his royal master would not bestow niggardly or begrudgingly. Benaiah replied by a profound bow before his majesty, and left the palace to prepare at once for his hazardous journey. There is no need for details of the hardships the young hero had to encounter on his journey, where there was not a blade of grass, a drop of water, or a shade for shelter from the merciless rays of the scorching sun. Nor is it necessary to relate all his adventures, and all the subtle designs adopted to wrest the shomir from its guard. Suffice it to say that the hardships and adventures of our hero were rewarded by success, and the shomir was at last in Jerusalem. Needless to say, there were great joy and festivity in the holy city, and the work, which lasted 7 years, now began in earnest, that of erecting without iron or any other metal a structure for the worship of the God of Israel, a structure which is the admiration of the world, and which has never been equaled in majesty and splendor. Ashmedai, the mighty king of demons, was all these years held captive by Solomon in Jerusalem. He was very desirous to be informed by the chief of the demons concerning the mystic spheres, but during the building of the temple he was too much occupied with the sacred business to be able to spare time for anything else. After the consecration of the holy edifice, Solomon had Ashmedai brought before him and explained the reason of his prolonged captivity, requesting him at the same time, first of all, to explain to him his inexplicable conduct whilst on the way to Jerusalem. What, for instance, prompted you to guide the blind man into safety when he was entangled in a bush? Surely it could not have been compassion, a virtue to which a demon is a stranger, Ashmedai replied. That blind man is the most pious and righteous man, and I heard it proclaimed in the higher spheres that great reward should be his who should render that man a service. And why did you lead the drunken man into the road away from the precipice into which he was walking? That man, said Ashmedai, is very wicked, and if he deserves any reward for ever having done anything but evil, he should receive it here on earth. And what provoked your laughter when you heard a man inquire for boots to last him 7 years? Simply, said the master of demons, that the man had but 7 days more on earth. Why did you weep on meeting a bridal party with its music? Mighty king of Israel, exclaimed Ashmedai, this very moment the last shred of flesh is gnawed off the bones of that bridegroom. He died 5 days after I met the wedding party. Last of all, demanded Solomon, what was the cause of your laughter on seeing the wizard with the people who consulted him? Why should I not laugh when I saw a stupid person who professed to remove the veil of the hidden future, whilst he knew not that under the stone on which he was sitting there was hidden a kingly treasure? King Solomon now intimated by a gesture that he wished to be left alone with the king of the demons, and all his counselors, ministers, and high officials surrounding his throne left the palatial room. When the king was alone with Ashmedai, he addressed him as follows. The fact that I carefully excluded all my advisers from hearing what there is between us will have shown you that I have an important matter upon which I crave information from you. I therefore want you, O Ashmedai, whose power is infinitely above mine, because you know what is going on in the higher as well as in the lower spheres, to tell me my own future. Ashmedai betrayed a satirical smile, and said, It is perhaps not to be wondered at that a monarch as wise and mighty on earth as you are, who has acquired almost all the knowledge that it is possible for a mortal man to possess, should long for knowledge of the supernatural from the region of the unseen. But I must advise you to desist from this ambition. It will not be of any use or pleasure to you. No, insisted Solomon, nothing will induce me to abstain from increasing my knowledge, for it is that, and not silver or gold, that I have set my heart upon. If my advice is to no purpose, said Ashmedai, I will proceed to open for you the hidden secrets, but it will be necessary to release me from the chain I had put round me when I was made captive, and you will, instead, have to give me the chain that adorns your majesty's neck, and the ring with the name of God on it, which lies on the table before you. Solomon did as suggested, took off his chain and put it on Ashmedai's neck, and placed the ring on his hand. Scarcely had the master of the demons closed his hand on the ring handed him by Solomon, a thunderclap passed through the room which made the whole place vibrate. At the same moment, Ashmedai seemed to have grown into a terrible giant. His eyes looked like two great gleaming fires, his arms extended to enormous proportions, and looked as though they would catch hold of the extreme ends of the earth. Solomon trembled at the sight. His heart seemed to stand still from terror, and he was about to call for help, but his whole body was paralyzed, his tongue refused its duty, and in the midst of this he was seized by Ashmedai by arm and neck and thrown into the air, and he became senseless. The men who had quitted the throne room at King Solomon's bidding were all the time impatiently awaiting the summons back to their king and master, but they remained in the anteroom longer than they had ever had to wait. When at last they received the glad tidings, and the monarch summoned them to his presence, they found, on entering the throne room, King Solomon sitting as usual on his throne. They expressed their surprise at the absence of Ashmedai, whom they had left in the room on retiring, but no answer was vouchsafed to them. The king, however, took up the thread of the conversation on the subject upon which he was consulting when they retired from the room. Yet they detected a marked change in the tone of the king's words, which lacked that mildness and gentleness for which the wise Solomon was so renowned. Some of the ministers ventured to ask his majesty for the reason of this change, but instead of a reply they received a sardonic laugh. It occurred to some of the wise men that this might not be King Solomon, but Ashmedai, the king of demons, who usurped their monarch's position, but who could give expression to that dreadful thought. King Solomon had been thrown by Ashmedai no less a distance than 400 miles from Jerusalem. For a long time he lay in the open field, unconscious. As consciousness returned and he opened his eyes, he took in the situation. But happily his wisdom had not failed, amongst his other great qualities, to bestow on him the habit of practicing abstinence in the midst of his splendor, and he occasionally used to subject himself to actual hunger, and deprive himself of the necessities of life, so as to cultivate the habit of wanting things and not having them. He now made up his mind to face his great calamity in the best way possible, and resolved that, if need were, he would be bent but not broken totally by it. As a beggar he traversed the land over which he ruled with such splendor and power, and he was often thrown on the mercy of one of his humblest subjects. Yet in the midst of this great sorrow he proclaimed himself, wherever he came, the great Koheleth, king of Jerusalem. No wonder that he was everywhere looked upon as insane. But he struggled hard to make his way to Jerusalem, which he eventually reached, and on his arrival at his metropolis, he asked to be brought before the Sanhedrin. He repeated to the Sanhedrin his assertion that he was King Solomon, and related to them all the events that had happened to him. His statement was received by the Sanhedrin, if not with derision, still with great mistrust and incredulity, and they were about to declare him insane, when one of the Sanhedrin, wiser and bolder than the others, rose and spoke as follows. Friends and worthy colleagues, whom the Lord has graced with wisdom and understanding, it will not be difficult for you to comprehend that anyone afflicted with insanity would not be able to make so coherent a statement as we have now heard, but would wander about in his assertions incoherently from one subject to another. Now this man who asserts himself to be King Solomon has not spoken one incoherent word, and has given no indication of his insanity, except his assertion in general that he is the great king, our master, and that assertion he made coherently enough. Besides this, there is no reason whatever, either in his demeanor, gesture, or speech, to condemn him as insane. Would it be consistent with justice, as shown to us by our great lawgiver, to conclude that this man is insane simply because he claims the throne as his own, without further investigation as to who is the one who now occupies the throne as King Solomon? Moreover, can we overlook the fact that when we left the throne room, there were two individuals, and when we returned, one had disappeared, without our being able to comprehend how that happened? My advice is that we request Topos, one of King Solomon's many wives, that when the present king pays her a visit, she may notice his feet, and on our report on this you can form your judgment in this matter. The Sanhedrin fell in with this suggestion, and when they appealed to Topos, she reported that the king, her husband, never entered her chamber without a cover over his feet. The Sanhedrin requested her to try and remove the covering from her husband's feet at the next opportunity. Topos did as requested by the Sanhedrin, and reported that, to her amazement and disgust, she found her husband's feet to resemble those of a cock. Footnote: demons resemble man in these respects. They eat and drink, are fruitful and multiply and die, but they also somewhat resemble angels insofar as they have wings, flying to and fro all the world over like angels, and knowing a little of the secrets of the higher spheres, not quite as much as angels, but generally the fate of men is known to them. Hence Ashmedai knew the fate of those he met on his way to Jerusalem. And footnote 143. The rabbis say that the feet of demons resemble those of a cock. The Sanhedrin were now concerned to have Ashmedai stripped of the chain and the ring by which he had subtly obtained the throne from King Solomon. In this they succeeded through a confidential servant of the demon, and these precious and holy things were handed over to the rightful owner, the real King Solomon, who now re-entered upon his glorious throne. The wise king had the chief of the demons brought before him, and exhibited to him the chain and the ring. The demon, amidst a peal of thunder, made his escape from the palace, and was seen no more. Solomon was again in his former greatness, but was till the end of his days in terror of demons. Hence he had 60 of the most valiant men of his army surrounding his bed. Testament of Solomon, translated by F.C. Conever. Testament of Solomon, son of David, who was king in Jerusalem, and mastered and controlled all spirits of the air, on the earth and under the earth. By means of them also he wrought all the transcendent works of the temple, telling also of the authorities they wield against men, and by what angels these demons are brought to naught. Of the sage Solomon. Blessed art thou, O Lord God, who didst give Solomon such authority. Glory to thee, and might unto the ages. Amen. And behold, when the temple of the city of Jerusalem was being builded, and the artificers were working thereat, Ornias the demon came among them toward sunset, and he took away half of the pay of the chief deviser's little boy, as well as half his food. He also continued to suck the thumb of his right hand every day, and the child grew thin, although he was very much loved by the king. So King Solomon called the boy one day, and questioned him, saying, Do I not love thee more than all the artisans who are working in the temple of God? Do I not give thee double wages and a double supply of food? How is it that day by day and hour by hour thou growest thinner? But the child said to the king, I pray thee, O king, listen to what has befallen all that thy child hath. After we are all released from our work on the temple of God, after sunset, when I lie down to rest, one of the evil demons comes and takes away from me 1/2 of my pay and 1/2 of my food. Then he also takes hold of my right hand and sucks my thumb. And lo, my soul is oppressed, and so my body waxes thinner every day. Now when I, Solomon, heard this, I entered the temple of God, and prayed with all my soul night and day, that the demon might be delivered into my hands, and that I might gain authority over him. And it came about through my prayer that grace was given to me from the Lord Sabaoth, by Michael his archangel. He brought me a little ring, having a seal consisting of an engraved stone. And he said to me, Take, O Solomon, king, son of David, the gift which the Lord has sent thee, the highest Sabaoth. With it thou shalt lock up all demons of the earth, male and female, and with their help thou shalt build up Jerusalem. Thou wear this seal of God, and this engraving of the seal of ring sent thee is a pentalpha. And I, Solomon, was overjoyed, and praised and glorified the God of heaven and earth. And on the morrow I called the boy, and gave him the ring, and said to him, Take this, and at the hour in which the demon shall come unto thee, throw this ring at the chest of the demon, and say to him, In the name of God, King Solomon calls thee hither. And then do thou come running to me, without having any misgivings or fear, in respect of aught thou mayest hear on the part of the demon. So the child took the ring and went off. And behold, at the customary hour, Ornias, the fierce demon, came like a burning fire to take the pay from the child. But the child, according to the instructions received from the king, threw the ring at the chest of the demon and said, King Solomon calls thee hither. And then he went off at a run to the king. But the demon cried out aloud, saying, Child, why hast thou done this to me? Take the ring off me, and I will render to thee the gold of the earth. Only take this off me, and forbear to lead me away to Solomon. But the child said to the demon, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, I will not brook thee. So come hither. And the child came at a run, rejoicing, to the king, and said, I have brought the demon, O king, as thou didst command me, O my master. And behold, he stands before the gates of the court of thy palace, crying out and supplicating with a loud voice, offering me the silver and gold of the earth, if I will only bring him unto thee. And when Solomon heard this, he rose up from his throne and went outside into the vestibule of the court of his palace. And there he saw the demon, shuddering and trembling. And he said to him, Who art thou? And the demon answered, I am called Ornias. And Solomon said to him, Tell me, O demon, to what zodiacal sign thou art subject? And he answered, To the water pourer, and those who are consumed with desire for the noble virgins upon earth. These I strangle. But in case there is no disposition to sleep, I am changed into 3 forms. Whenever men come to be enamored of women, I metamorphose myself into a comely female, and I take hold of the men in their sleep, and play with them. And after a while I again take to my wings and hide me to the heavenly regions. I also appear as a lion, and I am commanded by all the demons. I am offspring of the archangel Uriel, the power of God. I, Solomon, having heard the name of the archangel, prayed and glorified God, the Lord of heaven and earth. And I sealed the demon and set him to work at stone cutting, so that he might cut the stones in the temple, which, lying along the shore, had been brought by the sea of Arabia. But he, fearful of the iron, continued and said to me, I pray thee, King Solomon, let me go free, and I will bring you all the demons. And as he was not willing to be subject to me, I prayed the archangel Uriel to come and succor me. And I forthwith beheld the archangel Uriel coming down to me from the heavens. And the angel bade the whales of the sea come out of the abyss, and he cast his destiny upon the ground, and that destiny made subject to him the great demon. And he commanded the great demon and bold Ornias to cut stones at the temple. And accordingly I, Solomon, glorified the God of heaven and maker of the earth. And he bade Ornias come with his destiny, and gave him the seal, saying, Away with thee, and bring me hither the prince of all the demons. So Ornias took the finger ring, and went off to Beelzebul, who has kingship over the demons. He said to him, Hither, Solomon calls thee. But Beelzebul, having heard, said to him, Tell me, who is this Solomon of whom thou speakest to me? Then Ornias threw the ring at the chest of Beelzebul, saying, Solomon the king calls thee. But Beelzebul cried aloud with a mighty voice, and shot out a great burning flame of fire. And he arose and followed Ornias, and came to Solomon. And when I saw the prince of demons, I glorified the Lord God, maker of heaven and earth. And I said, Blessed art thou, Lord God Almighty, who hast given to Solomon thy servant wisdom, the assessor of the wise, and has subjected unto me all the power of the devil. And I questioned him and said, Who art thou? The demon replied, I am Beelzebub, the exarch of the demons, and all the demons have their chief seats close to me, and I it is who make manifest the apparition of each demon. And he promised to bring to me in bonds all the unclean spirits. And I again glorified the God of heaven and earth, as I do always give thanks to him. I then asked of the demon if there were females among them, and when he told me that there were, I said that I desired to see them. So Beelzebul went off at high speed, and brought unto me Onoscalis, that had a very pretty shape, and the skin of a fair-hued woman, and she tossed her head. And when she was come, I said to her, Tell me, who art thou? But she said to me, I am called Onoscalis, a spirit wrought of the Shabtai of Saturn, lurking upon the earth. There is a golden cave where I lie, but I have a place that ever shifts. At one time I strangle men with a golden noose. At another I creep up from the nature to the arms, through worms. But my most frequent dwelling place are the precipices, caves, ravines. Oftentimes, however, do I consort with men in the semblance of a woman, and above all with those of a dark skin. For they share my star with me, since they it is who privately or openly worship my star, without knowing that they harm themselves, and but whet my appetite for further mischief. For they wish to provide money by means of memory or commemoration, but I supply a little to those who worship me fairly. And I, Solomon, questioned her about her birth, and she replied, I was born of a voice untimely, the so-called echo of a man's ordure dropped in a wood. For the demon born of an echo, we have an analog in the Hebrew Bath Kol, the daughter of a voice, in the Gnostic hymn to Hermes. And I said to her, Under what star dost thou pass? And she answered me, Under the star of the full moon, for the reason that the moon travels over most things. Then I said to her, And what angel is it that frustrates thee? And she said to me, He that in thee, or through thee, is reigning. And I thought that she mocked me, and bade a soldier strike her. But she cried aloud and said, I am subjected to thee, O king, by the wisdom of God given to thee, and by the angel Joel. So I commanded her to spin the hemp for the ropes used in the building of the house of God. And accordingly, when I had sealed and bound her, she was so overcome and brought to naught as to stand night and day spinning the hemp. And I at once bade another demon to be led unto me, and instantly there approached me the demon Asmodeus, bound. And I asked him, Who art thou? But he shot on me a glance of anger and rage, and said, And who art thou? And I said to him, Thus punished as thou art, answerest thou me? But he with rage said to me, But how shall I answer thee? For thou art a son of man, whereas I was born an angel's seed by a daughter of man, so that no word of our heavenly kind addressed to the earthborn can be overweening. Wherefore also my star is bright in heaven, and men call it, some the wain, and some the dragon's child. I keep near unto the star. So ask me not many things, for thy kingdom also after a little time is to be disrupted, and thy glory is but for a season. And short will be thy tyranny over us, and then we shall again have free range over mankind, so as that they shall revere us as if we were gods, not knowing, men that they are, the names of the angels set over us. And I, Solomon, on hearing this, bound him more carefully, and ordered him to be flogged with thongs of ox-hide, and to tell me humbly what was his name and what his business. And he answered me thus, I am called Asmodeus among mortals, and my business is to plot against the newly wedded, so that they may not know one another. And I sever them utterly by many calamities, and I waste away the beauty of virgin women, and estrange their hearts. And I said to him, Is this thy only business? And he answered me, I transport men into fits of madness and desire, when they have wives of their own, so that they leave them, and go off by night and day to others that belong to other men, with the result that they commit sin, and fall into murderous deeds. And I adjured him by the name of the Lord Sabaoth, saying, Fear God, Asmodeus, and tell me by what angel thou art frustrated. But he said, By Raphael, the archangel that stands before the throne of God. But the liver and gall of a fish put me to flight, when smoked over ashes of the tamarisk. I again asked him and said, Hide not aught from me, for I am Solomon son of David, king of Israel. Tell me the name of the fish which thou reverest. And he answered, It is the glanos by name, and is found in the rivers of Assyria. Wherefore it is that I roam about in those parts. And I said to him, Hast thou nothing else about thee, Asmodeus? And he answered, The power of God knoweth, which hath bound me with the indissoluble bonds of yonder one seal, that whatever I had told thee is true. I pray thee, King Solomon, condemn me not to go into water. But I smiled and said to him, As the Lord God of my fathers liveth, I will lay iron on thee to wear. But thou shalt also make the clay for the entire construction of the temple, treading it down with thy feet. And I ordered them to give him 10 water jars to carry in. And the demon groaned terribly and did the work I ordered him to do. And this I did because that fierce demon Asmodeus knew even the future. And I, Solomon, glorified God, who gave wisdom to me, Solomon, his servant. And the liver of the fish and its gall I hung on the spike of a reed, and burned it over Asmodeus because of his being so strong, and his unbearable malice was thus frustrated. And I summoned again to stand before me Beelzebul, the prince of demons. And I sat him down on a raised seat of honor, and said to him, Why art thou alone, prince of the demons? And he said to me, Because I alone am left of the angels of heaven that came down. For I was first angel, in the first heaven being entitled Beelzebul, and now I control all those who are bound in Tartarus. But I too have a child, and he haunts the Red Sea. And on any suitable occasion he comes up to me again, being subject to me, and reveals to me what he has done, and I support him. I, Solomon, said unto him, Beelzebul, what is thy employment? And he answered me, I destroy kings, I ally myself with foreign tyrants, and my own demons I set unto men, in order that the latter may believe in them and be lost. And the chosen servants of God, priests and faithful men, I excite unto desires for wicked sins, and evil heresies, and lawless deeds, and they obey me, and I bear them on to destruction. And I inspire men with envy, and desire for murder, and for wars and sodomy, and other evil things, and I will destroy the world. So I said to him, Bring to me thy child, who is, as thou sayest, in the Red Sea. But he said to me, I will not bring him to thee, but there shall come to me another demon called Ephipas. Him will I bind, and he will bring him up from the deep unto me. And I said to him, How comes thy son to be in the depth of the sea, and what is his name? And he answered me, Ask me not, for thou canst not learn from me. However, he will come to thee by any command, and will tell thee openly. I said to him, Tell me by what angel thou art frustrated. And he answered, By the holy and precious name of the Almighty God, called by the Hebrews by a row of numbers, of which the sum is 644. And among the Greeks it is Emmanuel. And if one of the Romans adjure me by the great name of the power Elieth, I disappear at once. I, Solomon, was astounded when I heard this, and I ordered him to saw up Theban marbles. And when he began to saw the marbles, the other demons cried out with a loud voice, howling, because of their king, Beelzebul. But I, Solomon, questioned him, saying, If thou wouldst gain a respite, discourse to me about the things in heaven. And Beelzebul said, Hear, O king, if thou burn gum and incense and bulb of the sea with nard and saffron, and light 7 lamps in an earthquake, thou wilt firmly fix thy house. And if, being pure, thou light them at dawn in the sun alight, then wilt thou see the heavenly dragons, and how they wind themselves along and drag the chariot of the sun. And I, Solomon, having heard this, rebuked him and said, Silence for this present, and continued to saw the marbles as I commanded thee. And I, Solomon, praised God, and commanded another demon to present himself to me. And one came before me who carried his face high up in the air, but the rest of the spirit curled away like a snail. And it broke through the few soldiers, and raised also a terrible dust on the ground, and carried it upwards, and then again hurled it back to frighten us, and asked what questions I could ask as a rule. And I stood up, and spat on the ground in that spot, and sealed with the ring of God, and forthwith the dust wind stopped. Then I asked him, saying, Who art thou, O wind? Then he once more shook up the dust, and answered me, What wouldst thou have, King Solomon? I answered him, Tell me what thou art called, and I would fain ask thee a question. But so far I give thanks to God, who has made me wise to answer their evil plots. But the demon answered me, I am the spirit of the ashes, Tephras. And I said to him, What is thy pursuit? And he said to me, I bring darkness on men, and set fire to fields, and I bring homesteads to naught. But most busy am I in summer. However, when I get an opportunity, I creep into corners of the wall by night and day, for I am offspring of the Great One and nothing less. Accordingly I said to him, Under what star dost thou lie? And he answered, In the very tip of the moon's horn, when it is found in the south. There is my star. For I have been bidden to restrain the convulsions of the hematertian fever. And this is why many men pray to the hematertian fever, using these 3 names, Bultala, Thalal, Melchal, and I heal them. And I said to him, I am Solomon. When therefore thou wouldst do harm, by whose aid dost thou do it? But he said to me, By the angels, by whom also the 3rd day's fever is lulled to rest. So I questioned him and said, And by what name? And he answered, That of the archangel Azael. And I summoned the archangel Azael, and set a seal on the demon, and commanded him to seize great stones, and toss them up to the workmen on the higher parts of the temple. And, being compelled, the demon began to do what he was bidden to do. And I glorified God afresh, who gave me this authority, and ordered another demon to come before me. And there came 7 spirits, females, bound and woven together, fair in appearance and comely. And I, Solomon, seeing them, questioned them and said, Who are ye? But they, with one accord, said with one voice, We are of the 33 elements of the cosmic ruler of the darkness. And the first said, I am deception. The second said, I am strife. The third, I am clothod, which is battle. The fourth, I am jealousy. The fifth, I am power. The sixth, I am error. The seventh, I am the worst of all, and our stars are in heaven. 7 stars humbling sheen, and all together. And we are called, as it were, goddesses. We change our place all in together, and together we live. Sometimes in Lydia, sometimes in Olympus, sometimes in a great mountain. The Pleiades seem to be referred to. In the Revised Version, canst thou bind the cluster of the Pleiades? In Job, they had a malign influence. The grouping of evil spirits by sevens is common in Babylonian and Jewish lore. As examples, I may cite the Testamentum of Reuben and the 7 evil spirits of the New Testament. Possibly as well the 7 planets are in question. Romans 15:6 has the same phrase. For 33 we should read 36 elements, the numerical value 36, Lamek Vav. So I, Solomon, questioned them one by one, beginning with the first, and going down to the 7th. The first said, I am deception. I deceive and weave snares here and there. I whet and excite heresies, but I have an angel who frustrates me, Lamek Alal. Likewise also the second said, I am strife, strife of strifes. I bring timbers, stones, hangers, my weapons on the spot. But I have an angel who frustrates me, Baruch Ayakel. Likewise also the third said, I am called Clothod, which is battle, and I cause the well-behaved to scatter, and fall foul one of the other. And why do I say so much? I have an angel that frustrates me, Marmarath. Likewise also the fourth said, I cause men to forget their sobriety and moderation. I part them and split them into parties, for strife follows me hand in hand. I rend the husband from the sharer of his bed, and children from parents, and brothers from sisters. But why tell so much to my despite? I have an angel that frustrates me, the great Balthiel. Likewise also the fifth said, I am power. By power I raise up tyrants and tear down kings. To all rebels I furnish power. I have an angel that frustrates me, Astaroth. Likewise also the sixth said, I am error, O King Solomon, and I will make thee to err, as I have before made thee to err. When I cause thee to slay thy own brother, I will lead you into error so as to pry into graves. And I teach them that dig, and I lead errant souls away from all piety. And many other evil traits are mine, but I have an angel that frustrates me, Uriel. First chapter in the Testament of Simeon, chapter 3:2, see 1 Kings. Second 25, a reference to necromancy, of which the object was to oblige the spirit of the dead to enter oneself. Likewise also the seventh said, I am the worst, and I make thee worse off than thou wast, because I will impose the bonds of Artemis. But the locust will set me free, for by means thereof is it fated that thou shalt achieve my desire. For if one were wise, he would not turn his steps toward me. This refers to the closing incident narrated in the Testament, the sacrificing by Solomon of 5 locusts to Moloch. So I, Solomon, having heard and wondered, sealed them with my ring. And since they were so considerable, I bade them dig the foundations of the temple of God, for the length of it was 250 cubits. And I bade them be industrious, and with one murmur of joint protest they began to perform the tasks enjoined. And I, Solomon, glorified the Lord, and bade another demon come before me. And there was brought to me a demon having all the limbs of a man, but without a head. And I, seeing him, said to him, Tell me, who art thou? And he answered, I am a demon. So I said to him, Which? And he answered me, I am called Envy, for I delight to devour heads, being desirous to secure for myself a head. But I do not eat enough, but am